Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and this is the Maurice Proto. It's not a prototype, and it's not a tow board. So that we're going to get right down to where did the name come from, because a lot of people are like, Proto, like is it a prototype? Proto, is it a tow board? Because it does have tow in the name. Proto comes from this board being developed from everything that Maurice, Ross Clark-Jones, all of Maurice's riders have learned in the development of their tow boards over the last 10 years. And in tow boards, you're surfing at an incredibly high rate of speed. Control is really important. Drive down the line is really important. Making sections when you're on waves like at Nazar in Portugal and 50, 60, whatever number of feet faces they're calling them now, it's not critical that you make the section. You're basically, your life depends on it that you make the section. So everything that they're learning on these tow boards, the outline of the board, the foil of the foam, the rail shape, the edge shape, all the micro details on these boards that meet at that level mean life or death is feeding down into this board as a standard paddle surfing step up board. And so that's where the name comes from. Again, not a prototype, not a tow board, but all of that information from all of that giant wave surfing is coming from tow boards directly into this board to give you the highest level of control and the highest level of performance. Talking about the design of this board, this is a step-up board designed for better waves. And looking at the board, there's a few things we want to point out about it. One is where the foam is located in this board. There's a lot of foam from where my hands are here through about here. So basically under where you're going to be laying on the board when you're paddling and getting into the wave. These boards paddle significantly better than the volume numbers that are on the board. It doesn't mean go way smaller on the volume. It just means that when you get the board, most people relate the volume number to how well it paddles as a direct correlation. But if you have all of the foam directly underneath your chest, and then if you had the same board where the foam's all the way to the nose and all the way to the tail and it's really thin underneath your chest, the one with all the foam underneath your chest is going to paddle better. So that's the very first thing that you notice on this board is the one that I have that I surfed when I was in Puerto Rico was a 7.0, and it paddled like a 7.4, 7.6 easily, even though I was on a 7.0. It just was gliding around the lineup, getting into waves really easy, and making it really easy to track down those bigger, more powerful waves. The next thing that you're going to notice on this shape is how much Maurice pulls the foam out of the rails. So when you're looking at the dimensions, this board here is 6'8", 20.38, 2.88. So a lot of people are like 2.88. That's like 2 7/8. They're like, oh, 2 7/8. Like, wow, that's way too thick. That's way too thick. But 2 7/8 is only on the stringer, and it goes out a little bit, and then it really steps down from about where my fingers are here to the rail. So when you put this board underneath your arm, the rail actually feels like if it's 2.88 on the stringer, it actually feels like about 2 5/8 or like 2.63 on the rails, or even close to 2.5. It's noticeable how much. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but we'll show you some photos as well. But just really like how much foam gets pulled out of this rail. We'll put a straight edge on it, and you can just tell. If you look at, that's about a dead level on the straight edge, and you look at from the center line to the rail, how much is being pulled out. That's quite a bit. So what does that do for you? Because it's great that it's a thin rail and you can carry it around real easily, but who cares about carrying it around? We just want to surf it. Carrying it around makes it easier to get down to the water, but in the water, the speed that you're riding this board at, you want to have the thickness underneath your chest and then also on the center line for getting into the wave, but you don't want to have the thickness on the rail, because when you're going at the speeds that these waves are going, you're not going to be able to lean over and get that rail to engage into the water. If you've got a thick rail, if you had a 2.88 center and it went all the way to the rail, you would go to lean over and the board would just stay flat, and you would just basically lean right into the wave and fall, and the board would just keep going. By having the rail be really thin, it allows you to get the rail, dig the rail into the water, and turn the board really aggressively, even at a higher rate of speed. The next thing you're going to notice on these boards is the bottom shape, and this is the bottom shape and the rail shape. And so this board is a step-up board for Maurice Cole's Metro, and the Metro, you know, has that deep concave. This board also has a significant concave, not as much of a concave as the Metro, but it still does have a good amount of single concave running through the board. That does two things. One, it keeps the center line of the board flatter, which is going to be better for paddling and getting into waves. Obviously, it creates lift for speed. That center line flatness is also going to paddle better. It's going to drive better down the line. And then if there is some sort of section that you need a straight line across, it's going to go faster across that. But it also puts, having that much concave puts a lot of rail rocker in the board. So when you put this board on its thin rail with more rail rocker, it's going to allow you to go more vertical on this board and have it be looser. So this board, compared to other boards that are in this same category, has a looser feel on the wave and the ability to throw the board around a lot more by having the foam shaved out of the thickness of the nose and having that concave, the ability to not only get into waves and have really good drive and be really controllable, but also the ability to throw it around on the wave is noticeable on this board compared to other boards. And a lot of it comes from that concentrated foam center in here, but not in the nose, and then also the outline and then the rocker. The other thing we talked about is the edge. Since this board is related to the Metro, it's got that concave, but it also has that crisp edge all the way from the tail to the nose. And most boards that you look at are going to have that crisp edge, and it's going to end, you know, somewhere in this area right here, and then it's going to go to a softer edge forward. What this edge does is basically it allows you to use the whole rail of the board to get more drive down the line. So rather than just having this part of the rail right up here, this edge, this allows you to just put the whole edge and use that whole edge to get, we're basically looking at at least twice the amount of drive down the line from this board that you would get from a standard softer rail board, and have it be not as dependent on either the back third of the board and or the fins. So a lot of times you're getting your drive from the back half or third of the board and then also from your fins. This one, the very first bottom turn that you go into riding one of these things, you notice how much faster it is because you have that much more rail to drive off of. And then also, since there's a crisp edge the whole way, the water releases off the rail. When you have a round rail, the water wraps around the rail and doesn't really know where to leave the board. But if you have a crisp edge, it just comes right off the board and there's the minimal amount of drag. So it makes the board that much drivier and then also that much faster on the top end. And that's something that I noticed right away surfing the Metro and then also with the Proto as well, is how much faster and then how much drivier it is and how much more locked in it is, especially high line up on the wave, or if you're in the barrel, you have that much more control of the rail in the wall of the wave, in that vertical part of the wave, because you've got a thin edge and you've got a sharp edge to go straight inside there. So it makes it a lot easier to control it, and then also a lot faster on the top end. Talking another thing about construction, you can see that this board has color in it. Once Maurice gets into his boards that are for better waves, more powerful waves, he's a fanatic about how you use color in the board, and then also obviously the strength of the board. And one thing that he's doing on all of his bigger wave boards is he never uses airbrush color. So he's never using paint on a board. Because when you use paint on a board, especially on a board like for bigger waves where strength is a concern, you're not getting a direct lamination of the fiberglass to the foam blank. You have that layer of paint in between. And that's a weakness point where the fiberglass could separate from the foam, which would then cause your board to buckle and then break. In all of Maurice's bigger wave boards, he always uses a resin tint. So resin tint is its color being put into the resin, so there's no weak point. And so all of his boards, he's very fanatical about it too. He just really hammers down on the details. So tints only in the bigger wave boards on the Maurice Coles. Talking about the tail a little bit. It's a step-up board, so you notice that the tail block, it's a reduced area tail block. It's a rounded pintail, and obviously area taken out underneath your back foot, underneath this block right here, to have the board sit down more neutral. and be more neutral in the water at those speeds. If you have a step-up board with a big tail block, it's just going to be too lifty under your back foot. So you're really looking more to neutralize the power of the board in those type of conditions. So you're going to go with a reduced area tail block. The majority of the Protos out there are dedicated tri-fins, but there are Protos out there that are also convertible 5. It'll work either way as a tri or a quad. The one thing that I've noticed on these boards is because of how much drive you get out of the rails, you don't have to ride as big of a fin. So what I've noticed on my Metro and then also on my Proto is I've stepped my fins down a size. In this board, I was using, and even at 215 pounds, I was using the Futures Tech Flex Eric Arakaras or the solid fiberglass Eric Arakaras. And that's a medium-sized fin, which at 215, I'm way outside of that range. Typically, I'd ride a large fin, but with the tail area being less, being narrower, you can go with a slightly smaller fin, and then also because of that, how far that edge goes and the ability to just drive off the rail rather than just the fins, you can get away with a smaller fin, which is going to be faster through the water, and then it's also going to be more maneuverable in the turns. So it's the Maurice Cole Proto, great step-up board, really confident and fast paddler, gets you into a lot of waves, and really good control and incredible speed on those bigger waves. And all of those things, when you're in that type of surf, all of those things are your friends, because you're going to be tracking down more waves, getting into the waves earlier, and then have the ability to set this thinner rail into the wave and drive really hard turns and get down the line and do what you want to do on those bigger waves. It's the Maurice Cole Proto. If you have any more questions, you can check it out on our website, realwatersports.com/surfing, or you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000. Thanks for tuning in.